Hey everyone, ready to go deep on something that hits home for all of us, the psychology of money.
Definitely. And we're not just talking budgets and spreadsheets here.
Right. More about the mindset behind money choices. Kind of like how we each have a money personality.
Exactly. And to really get into it, you've brought some interesting sources. Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money.
Yes. And a quick but smart YouTube summary from Escaping Ordinary. I liked how they each brought something different.
Totally. Housel's book, packed with real-life stories, shows how human finance really is. And that YouTube piece, great for grasping his main ideas fast.
So today, think of it as uncovering the hidden stuff that drives our decisions with money. Things we don't even realize. Like history plays a part,
It's
right?
sure. And then there are those stories we tell ourselves about wealth, almost subconsciously.
Ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay, Housel makes this strong point right off the bat. Being good with money isn't just about how smart you are, it's how you behave.
And he uses a comparison that really makes you think. Two guys, total opposites. Ronald Reed, a janitor, and then Richard Fuscone, Harvard grad, high-powered executive.
The janitor ends up a philanthropist, gives tons of money away. Piscone, bankrupt.
Blows your assumptions out of the water. We think, oh, education equals financial success. Reed proves that's not the whole picture at all.
It's a story that stuck with me too. Reed lived simply, but he invested bit by bit for decades. Let that compounding work its magic. He played the long game and won big time. And not just for himself, but for all the people he helped later with his donations.
Exactly. And the opposite is Fuscone, right? Every advantage in the world, but he falls for the traps. Impatience, chasing those get-rich-quick schemes. A warning to us all that the mindset matters more than anything.
This goes right into another thing. Housel points out how much our personal experiences matter. Like those stories we've lived through shape how we see money, even more than expert advice sometimes.
He tells this thought-provoking story about his aunt. Her view of factory work in the Philippines? A step up, a way out of poverty, a chance for something better. So different from how many people in, say, America would see it.
It makes you stop and think, huh, where we come from, the stuff we've been through, it all feeds into whether we're okay with risk. How much is enough money? Even what wealth means to us.
Right. It's a good reminder to look at those deep down beliefs we have about money. Where do they come from? Family, culture.
Good point. Now, for a topic that can be a little tough to talk about, luck and risk, Housel says they're basically inseparable. He uses these parallel lives, Bill Gates and his friend Ken Evans, to show this.
Yeah, it's a story that makes you think. Gates, we all know him. But he had this crazy stroke of luck going to Lakeside School, one of the few places back then with a computer.
Imagine that. One school having that access. It played a huge role in his whole path with Microsoft.
A 1 in a million chance, shaping his whole future.
And then Evans, just as smart, could have been a Microsoft co-founder. But a mountain climbing accident? Gone. Another 1 in a million event, but totally different outcome.
It makes you realize we can plan, make good choices, but there's always chance involved. How much of our own lives, good and bad, has been luck we didn't control?
Makes you humble, that's for sure.
Uh,
We need to plan, but also be ready for the curveballs life throws.
which ties right into one of Housel's big things, survival. It's not always about making a killing in the market. It's more about avoiding those huge mistakes that wipe you out. He uses this guy, Jesse Livermore. Amazing, but also tragic.
Oh yeah, Livermore. The trader who made fortunes, lost them, made them again. Brilliant at spotting market trends, but couldn't handle risk or his own emotions. Kept betting bigger until, boom.
What it teaches us, to build in some safety nets. How much can you handle emotionally and financially when things go wrong? A question everyone should ask themselves. You know, one of the big aha moments for me reading Housel was this idea that building wealth, it's less about your income and more about, get this, your savings rate.
That's not what you usually hear. Everyone's always talking about big salaries or picking the right stocks.
Right. But it's really how much you keep, not just what you make. He tells this story about the 1970s oil crisis. Headlines were all doom and gloom. Peak oil, we're running out, disaster.
Yeah, I bet people were freaking out.
But here's the thing, we didn't run out. What happened was we got smarter about energy,
Yeah.
cars became more efficient, we insulated houses better, even industries found ways to use less.
So we kind of tricked ourselves into having enough by just wasting less. That's a perfect analogy for personal finance.
Totally. Think of saving like your own energy efficiency plan. The more you cut back on unnecessary spending and boost those savings, the richer you actually become, no matter how much you're bringing in.
It's making the most of what you have, not always chasing that more, more, more.
Exactly. Which actually reminds me of another point Housel makes. The value of wealth. It's relative. Like he says, imagine two people, same net worth, but one's a way better investor than the other.
Okay, so you'd think the better investor is wealthier, right?
You would, but Housel throws a curveball. He says, if that less skilled investor has simpler needs, they're happy with less stuff, they could actually be experiencing more wealth.
Whoa, that's deep. So it's not just the size of your portfolio, it's how that money translates into your life, your freedom, your sense of security.
Exactly. It's all about aligning your money with what you actually value, your goals.
Hmm.
Speaking of goals, I was curious, does Housel talk much about being adaptable, flexible? Especially in the job market these days, it feels like those are the golden skills.
Oh, yeah, he has a whole chapter on that. He says being smart isn't enough anymore. He uses Google, for example, their hiring process. Ridiculous. Something like 0.2% acceptance rate.
So competitive, what's the secret then?
Housel says it's those things we often overlook. Soft skills, being a good communicator, empathy, and most of all, flexibility. Because tech changes constantly. Jobs change. Got to be able to learn new stuff fast.
He calls it a superpower. And I think he's right. It lets you grab opportunities, handle uncertainty, and actually find work you love, even when everything's in flux.
Definitely something for our learner types out there, always wanting to stay ahead of the game. What about market volatility, though? That scares a lot of people away from investing. Any advice from Housel on riding out those ups and downs?
He actually says to embrace risk, but not in a reckless way. He's careful to distinguish between good risk, the kind that fuels growth over time, versus the kind that can blow you up.
How do you tell the difference? Feels like walking a tightrope sometimes.
It comes down to your personal time horizon, how long you're investing for, and your risk tolerance, how much up and down you can stomach. If you're in it for the long haul, Housel says market volatility is just the price of admission for those great returns.
He makes this analogy with Disneyland.
Yes, you pay a lot to get in, right? You know you're going to be on that roller coaster, highs and lows, maybe even a little scared at times, but it's all part of the fun.
Like a fee, not a fine. You're paying for the whole experience.
Exactly. And investing is the same. Market swings are normal. If you're patient, disciplined, have a plan, those fluctuations can work in your favor over time.
So don't freak out and sell everything when things dip. See those as chances to buy low and trust in the overall upward trend.
Yep. And speaking of how we view things, I want to touch on something Housel talks about a lot: pessimism, especially when it comes to money. He says it often pretends to be intelligence, but can be very misleading.
It's funny how being negative often sounds so smart and sophisticated, appeals to our fears.
Right. But Housel points out, look back in history, pessimistic predictions have been wrong over and over. All that talk about oil shortages or limits of technology.
People don't often account for human ingenuity. We solve problems, adapt, and often end up exceeding even the most optimistic forecasts.
Exactly. So while being aware of risk is good, we shouldn't let pessimism paralyze us. Keep taking calculated risks. Go after those opportunities.
This connects to something really interesting Housel talks about, something a little unsettling: the power of narratives. The stories we tell ourselves, especially about money and success, they can really drive our decisions, even if they're based on incomplete information or wishful thinking.
He calls them appealing fictions. They're so seductive, especially with something as complex and emotional as money. He has this story about a father in Yemen. His son is sick, and he uses this dangerous folk remedy because it fits his worldview, even though it's risky.
It's a reminder that narratives are powerful, even when they go against logic or evidence. And we all do it, especially with money.
Absolutely. So how do we protect ourselves from those harmful narratives? Housel says, be skeptical of any story that confirms your biases or promises an easy solution. Challenge your own assumptions, look for different perspectives.
None of us have the complete picture. We fill in the gaps with stories, interpretations that make sense to us. But the key is to be aware of those stories and how they might be swaying us.
Self-awareness is huge here. Ask yourself, what stories am I telling myself about money? Where did those come from? Are they actually helping me?
Become a more conscious storyteller, both to yourself and the world around you.
Exactly. You know, another thing that really stuck with me was Housel's focus on defining enough. It feels like we're constantly bombarded with messages to strive for more money, more success. But he says, hold on, what really matters to you?
Like that analogy he uses, eating until you're sick. Enjoyable at first, but then painful, right? Money's the same. Constantly chasing more if you don't know why, it can leave you empty.
And defining enough doesn't mean settling or being deprived. It's about choosing a lifestyle that reflects your values, what's important to you. Real wealth isn't just your bank account, it's the quality of your life, your relationships.
This resonates with me. Remember when I walked away from that investment banking internship? Soul crushing, even though I liked the work itself. Tough financially, but I got something more valuable back. My time, my energy, the
Yeah.
freedom to do work I was actually passionate about.
That's a great example. It shows what Housel says, that money's real value is its ability to buy you freedom, control over your time. It's about having options, flexibility, not just piling up cash.
Exactly. Design a life where you're not always trading time for money, but using money to create more time for the things that matter.
Now, here's something people don't talk about enough. Real wealth is often what you don't see.
This goes back to that fake rich idea. The folks with the fancy cars, designer clothes, but secretly drowning in debt.
Right. Housel says true wealth is the options and security that come from saving and investing well, not keeping up appearances, but building that solid foundation so you can make choices from a position of strength.
Spend in line with your values. Don't get sucked into that gotta impress mentality.
And it comes down to saving, even if it's not the most glamorous topic. Housel says saving, even without a specific goal, is one of the smartest things you can do, like building a financial buffer, a safety net when life throws those curveballs.
A reserve of financial energy ready to go when you need it.
Exactly. Prepare for those unexpected things, not just the stuff you can plan for.
This reminds me, he makes another great comparison. He says saving is like the oil crisis back in the 70s. We became energy wealthier by using less energy. Same with money. Become financially wealthier by saving more, even if your income doesn't go up.
It's a good way to think about it. Saving isn't about deprivation, it's about optimizing, creating a sense of abundance, even when things feel scarce.
You don't always have to earn more to get ahead. Sometimes it's about making smarter choices with what you already have.
And that goes hand in hand with Housel's emphasis on long-term thinking. Time, he says, is the most powerful force in investing. Small, consistent efforts, they snowball over the years.
He looks at Warren Buffett, successful for what, like 7 decades? And then Jim Simons, a math genius, but didn't really hit it big investing-wise until his 50s.
And even though Simons' returns were higher, he's worth less overall because he started later. That's time and compounding in action.
Start early, even with a little bit, it makes a huge difference down the line. It's consistency and patience that win out.
Now, speaking of long-term thinking, there's this idea Housel introduces that I think is perfect for our listeners. The folks always wanting to learn and grow. It's about becoming financially unbreakable.
Sounds like something out of a comic book. What does that even mean?
It's about reaching a level of security where you can handle setbacks, go after opportunities, and make choices without being held back by fear or scarcity. That foundation lets you take risks, chase your passions, and weather those inevitable storms.
That's a powerful vision. How do you get there, though?
It starts with those habits we've been talking about. Saving regularly, investing smart, being mindful of spending, and making sure your money choices reflect your values, your goals.
A holistic approach,
Yeah.
looking at the whole picture, not just the numbers, but how you feel about money, your aspirations for the future.
Exactly. It's about building a life of freedom and resilience where you can pursue your dreams and have that sense of security, purpose.
So we've covered a lot of ground. Building that solid base, becoming financially unbreakable. But things change all the time, right? How does Housel say we adapt to all that uncertainty?
He's big on continuous learning. Being adaptable, especially now, with the global economy so complex. Those who can learn new stuff fast, they've got the edge in this ever-changing world.
Sounds like our learner listeners, always soaking up knowledge, wanting to stay ahead.
Exactly. And he reminds us, learning doesn't stop after school or your first few jobs. It's lifelong. The people who do best, they're always curious, questioning what they know, adding to their skills.
It's that growth mindset, being open to new possibilities, especially when the only constant is change.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Housel says a lot of our money behavior, it's driven by stuff we don't even realize. Biases, emotional impulses.
Like we're making choices based on gut feelings, past experiences, those narratives we talked about, even when it leads to bad decisions.
Yep. And one he points out is overconfidence bias. Thinking we're better than the average investor, that we can time the market perfectly, that we won't make mistakes.
Dangerous stuff, especially with money. A little overconfidence can cost you big time.
Oh, yeah. Housel says we need some humility. Know our limits, get objective feedback.
Be able to say, hey, I was wrong, learn from those mistakes, and always be looking for new information, different viewpoints. Don't let ego mess up good financial decisions.
The good thing is, he doesn't just point out problems. He gives solutions too, like to fight those unconscious biases. Get advice from people you trust. Consider other sides of the story. Take time to really think before making big money moves.
Putting systems in place to help us be more rational, make those smart choices, even when emotions are high, or you feel pressured to decide quickly.
He also says it's okay to get help. Talk to a financial pro, a mentor, get those insights, avoid those costly blunders.
Like having a money coach in your corner, navigating the whole game with you.
Exactly. And I want to bring back something we talked about before, defining what really matters to you. Housel says financial success by itself doesn't equal happiness or fulfillment.
Like that saying, money can't buy happiness, but it can buy freedom, options, and those can definitely lead to a happier, more fulfilling life.
Right. Align your money choices with your values, your passions, the stuff that brings you joy. What does Housel say? Ask yourself, what do I really want out of life?
Huh.
And then use money as the tool to get there, not just chase wealth for the sake of it.
A life rich in experiences, relationships, purpose, not just dollars and cents.
That's a powerful message, especially in a culture that's all about stuff. Thinking more stuff equals happiness.
So, big picture now, what are some of Housel's key takeaways for navigating the world of money?
He ends the book with these strong principles: humility, forgiving yourself, and thinking long term.
And he tells this crazy story about a dentist. Takes out a patient's teeth and tonsils without even asking. Just shows blindly following advice, even from so-called experts, can be a disaster.
Yeah. It means personal finance really is personal. What works for one person might not for another. You got to know yourself, your goals, how much risk you're okay with. Make choices that fit your values.
Be the CEO of your own money life, make informed decisions, and don't be afraid to ask for guidance.
So, practical steps we can take from all this.
Housel says, focus on what you can control. Savings, spending habits, how you invest. And it's okay to mess up, change course, be kind to yourself along the way.
Have a plan, even a simple one. What are your money goals? How are you going to reach them? It's like a roadmap. Helps you stay on track, make smart decisions even when things get tough or there are tempting distractions.
And give yourself some wiggle room, financially and emotionally. Have an emergency fund, maybe invest a bit more conservatively. Just be nice to yourself when you make mistakes.
Exactly. A financial cushion to weather those storms without getting totally blown off course. Remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Consistent, smart choices over time. And celebrate those wins along the way.
This deep dive has been eye-opening. I get it now, those forces behind our money decisions. The conscious stuff and the stuff we don't even realize.
Me too. And the big takeaway: money's a tool. It can help us reach goals, feel secure, make life better, but it's not the end goal in itself.
Align your money with what you value, what really matters. Building a life with purpose, meaning, connection.
And one last thought. Housel focuses on what we do as individuals. But what about the bigger picture? Inequality, access to education, how easy it is to get credit. Those things shape our choices too, right? Something to think about as you keep going on your financial journey.
Great point. We have a responsibility, but there are these larger forces at play too. This has been a lot to take in. Keep exploring these ideas, apply them to your own life. Thanks for joining us.